The final portion of photosynthesis is the light-independent portion, or the dark reaction, and this is where the sugars are finally produced. So again, the synthesis reaction, the dark reaction, also called the Calvin cycle, is a series of chemical reactions that is fairly complex, but we're just going to look at a simple outline of the processes. And these occur in the stroma, and this is the portion where enzymes are recycled. We're going to take ATP, we're going to take NADPH, those are the two high energy molecules that were produced during the light reaction. We're going to take carbon dioxide that the plant is going to get through the stomata, through those holes in the leaves, and sugar is going to finally be produced. So while this is a complex series of reactions, it's going to follow the basic format of 3 steps. Fixation, where this enzyme, rubisco, is going to take the carbon atoms from the carbon dioxide that's coming in and going to attach it to make an organic molecule, a 3-carbon molecule called glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. It's going to happen in a series of steps, and we're going to wind up with these molecules of G3P, or glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. This is going to result in the sugar forming process, where a couple of these G3Ps are going to be combined to form sugar. Then the leftover portions are going to be regenerated and repurposed back into the rubisco so that the cycle, the Calvin cycle, can start again. It's going to take a small amount of ATP along the way, but the chloroplast has the ATP from the light-dependent part, or the light reaction within photosynthesis. So we're going to prepare an enzyme, this rubisco, by taking the carbon from carbon dioxide. Remember, we'd asked before in the previous video, where is it that the mass comes from an acorn to turn into a tree? Well, it's going to come from the carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide, the carbon and the oxygen, is going to be taken and processed into this precursor of sugar, this G3P, and is going to be formulated into the final sugar and is going to help to provide the mass for that tree. Then the leftover portions are going to be recycled and repurposed so that we can regenerate that enzyme and rubisco can be reformed. So think about these for a moment, and when you are ready, unpause the video and I'll discuss them. Okay, so why is it that a plant can't make sugar without sunlight when it didn't take any sunlight, right, to perform the Calvin cycle? No sun was required there, no photons. Well, of course, the reason that you need sunlight is the plant has to have the ATP and the NADPH. It has to have the energy to perform the sugar production, and without the light, it wouldn't have that energy. So sunlight is needed during the light reaction. It's needed in the thylakoid, and it's going to produce the energy, or going to bring the energy to the chloroplast to move into the light-dependent portion of photosynthesis. Water is required in the light-dependent part. It's going to be in that first step in the water splitting process to replace the hydrogen that is lost as electrons jump from one protein to the next. And carbon dioxide is needed in the Calvin cycle in the light-independent portion of photosynthesis. It's going to be dismantled and put in place to build the precursors to the sugar. Okay, now some plants can do really well in hot, dry environments, but that seems kind of counterintuitive, because if water is so essential for photosynthesis, being in a hot, dry climate where water evaporation is a serious threat doesn't seem very good for plants. And so how are plants going to be able to maintain the water and keep the water in a very dry, arid environment? Well, you have to think at first that the stomata, those are the holes, the pores in the leaves. The stomata, or each individual stoma, can be opened, which is what it's going to generally do in the plants that we see around here during the day. This is going to allow carbon dioxide in and allow that oxygen as a waste product to go out. But it can close this off, and when it is very hot, the leaves will do this. They will close their stoma so that they don't have to worry about water evaporating out. But how are they then going to get the carbon dioxide that they need? Okay, and what we looked at is what C3 photosynthesis, what most of the plants around us do. During the day, the stomata are open, and they can get in all the carbon dioxide that they need to fuel the Calvin cycle. And they really don't have to worry too much if water evaporates out of the stomata because they have plenty of water. If there's an arid environment, and where corn is native, is from Arizona, New Mexico, areas that are far more arid, what they can do is have the stomata only partially open during the day. This is going to require some energy to be used because they're not going to get quite enough carbon dioxide to fuel all of their energy needs, but they're going to get enough to fuel the Calvin cycle. And finally, what they can do is completely dissociate the carbon uptake from the Calvin cycle. And during the night, they'll have their stomata open so they can get the carbon dioxide that they need for the light independent portion. But during the day, when the ATP and the NADPH are being produced during the light dependent portion, the stomata are going to remain closed so that the plant does not have to worry about excessive water loss. And that's what cacti and other pure desert plants are going to do, and that's called CAM photosynthesis. So if you look at where these C4 plants reside, the areas down here indicates 80% are C4 plants and the remaining 20% are C3. And you can see the breakdown as we move farther north into less and less hot areas and into generally less arid regions. We're going to have a greater reliance on C3 photosynthesis and less on C4. Okay, so think about these and unpause the video when you're ready. Right, and C4 and CAM photosynthesis are going to actually require ATP to get carbon dioxide into the plant. But this is necessary because if you are at such a risk of losing water that you're going to not be able to perform the light-dependent portion of photosynthesis, then it's worth a little loss of energy to get the carbon dioxide that you need. And that's why it is only produced, or this type of photosynthesis is only performed in arid regions. And of course, the difference between the stomata, the stoma, and the stroma is that the stoma are the holes in the leaves that allow for the exchange of gases, carbon dioxide to move in and oxygen to move out of the leaf. And the stroma is a portion of the inside of a chloroplast. So very different, but both essential to the function of a plant.